Now I'm live. Hey, I apologize. I forgot to hit the button. So, all right. Well, that's my fault. So I apologize. So I just want to make sure that I chatted about this real quick. That I do apologize about being late. I was had some stuff come up, and rather than just blast everybody with a bunch of updates, I figured there would be some people hanging out waiting. So I'm going to do better in the future to get this on a more concurrent basis than. So like every week we'll do it. Maybe I'll push it back an hour, so in case I do run into problems, that I'll be able to rectify those situations. But at any rate, we're going to talk about the SD-WAN lab itself, because that's something that I see a lot of people. I get a lot of questions about how the lab should be set up and how are you doing things. Well, what do you need to have in play in order for the setup to work. So we're going to definitely talk about those details as we're going through this little setup. So I'm waiting for the lab to spin up here. I had it powered down because I was working on some things, and so I'm actually going to start bringing all the equipment up and get everything squared away. That'll take a little bit of time to do, but in the meantime, while I'm waiting for a lot of the lab to spin up and all that good stuff, I'll show you the behind the scenes of what I'm doing in terms of the operations and things like that. So yeah, good stuff. So while those are booting up, you definitely want to make sure that you have enough horsepower on your box, because for some reason, when you're dealing with Cisco SD-WAN, there's a lot of the virtual devices that you would use to run the controllers, vManage, vSmart, vBond, they can be a little bit resource intensive. So I'm going to give you some kind of behind the scenes of what it is that I'm doing and stuff like that, because, well, figure this way here, you guys can ask me questions and I can try to help, fill in some gaps and stuff like that. So we'll see exactly how that comes into play as we're going along. So I'm actually going to continue booting this stuff up, and if you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment in the live chat. I will be monitoring that as I'm going along and stuff like that. I'm also going to be logging into the server on the back end. So this is actually running on a server, so we'll take a look at what's going on in the server. And a lot of questions have come in regarding can I run Eve inside of, say, VMware Workstation or Workstation Player and then do SD-WAN that way. Maybe you've got a really beefy laptop and you want to run Eve locally. You don't have a dedicated server. That's actually how I'm pulling it off. In respect to getting let me go ahead and just show you how I'm doing it real quick. Let me go ahead and log into the server. This is a Cisco UCS C220 M3. So it's I've had it for quite a while now, and as you can see, I've got VMware Workstation Pro deployed. Now I'm running Workstation 16, and it actually works pretty well. So if I go about VMware Workstation, this is 16. I am on an eval copy, and it works really, really well. I find that when you do something like this, it works out significantly well in terms of the operations and things like that. One of the cool things, when you do something like this, one of the cool things is Workstation 16 basically allows you to run some pretty beefy servers. What is the link for the server? Well, it's not a public. Are you talking like if you wanted to buy the server? I just went on eBay. I can kind of show you what that would look like if you want me to. But Cisco UCS C220 M3. I installed Server 2016 on it, which is what's running in the background here. Let me go ahead and should be able to. There we go, full screen. So click on OK there. Let me go ahead and minimize Workstation. Just Server 2016 sitting behind the scenes. It works really, really well. And this guy actually it's a octa-core server. So it's two 8-core CPUs, which gives me 16 total physical CPU, or 16 cores, and then it gives me a total of 32 logical processors with hyper-threading enabled, which is actually pretty good. So what I end up doing with that is I deployed Workstation Pro, which we have right here. Workstation Pro works out really, really well. And then I installed Workstation 16 so I could take and roll out much beefier VMs. So Workstation 15 had a limit. You could only do, I think it was 16 vCPUs per virtual machine, where in Workstation Pro 16, you can actually roll out 32. So basically doubles the capacity. This particular virtual machine is running 24. So it gives me a lot of latitude in terms of the size of the virtual machine that I deploy. So pretty cool stuff. And here I've got, well, my SD, oh, okay, that was weird. Getting a lot of flickering in the background. I deployed the EVE-NG community version as a VM inside of Workstation. Worked out really, really well. And then I went and the settings to this are set up where I gave it 48 gigs of RAM and 24 processors. So for those of you that have like a Mac Pro or MacBook Air or MacBook Pro, or you have a really beefy laptop, you probably could pull some of this stuff off. But at the end of the day, this works out really, really well. So I gave it 4 processors and 6 cores. So it gets the job done in this particular case, which is what I was looking for. So we have that, and then as I bring the server up and get it running, it's been actually running quite well for the past probably 2 or 3 weeks. So a lot of the videos you've seen so far on that I've released to YouTube, they're actually running in the same model, but on a little bit older version of Workstation. It was Workstation 15.5 and change. But as I noticed that the CPU, with the more capabilities that I threw at the environment, the higher the CPU went. And it became like waiting 3, 4, 5 minutes for one single update to get pushed because of the CPU. There just wasn't enough top end for it. So I went and downloaded the 30-day trial for Workstation 16. It's been working great. I can't recommend it enough. Now, for those of you that have a server with running ESXi and you want to run EVE as a dedicated virtual machine, hey, that'll work out really, really well too. But I'm playing around with both options in this particular case in order to see what's available. Now, when we jump back over to here, we're bringing up the environment, so hopefully the iNet router should be just about there. Cool, he's done. So the MPLS router should be right behind it, and once we get past that, then the rest of this stuff comes up pretty easily. So I'm going to go ahead and start bringing on let me go do the controllers first, because then that'll give me some latitude in terms of getting everything online. So we'll start bringing these guys online. But as we progress through here and we take a look at some of the options, it's actually pretty cool of how it all comes out to play and gets working. The first several videos that I've released to YouTube regarding SD-WAN, they've actually been really well received. So I do appreciate everyone that has watched the videos and things like that. So definitely happy you guys were able to check that out. But I wanted to leverage this live stream to hopefully help everybody out that is struggling with getting certain things to work. So whether you're, that's why I'm going to let the chat go live and we'll see exactly how it all plays out. But I'm going to let all this stuff come online because I do want to go through and do some more labs regarding SD-WAN and get some other stuff working. I've covered a lot of stuff so far, but there's still a lot left to do because SD-WAN is a pretty involved solution once you start getting into the meat and taters of it. So yeah, let me start bringing up vManage and then vBond. vBond is actually just a vEdge that's been converted over to the vBond option. So pretty cool stuff and how that works. So keep bringing these guys online. And we actually don't need the CA to be deployed, considering it's already done its job. It's already provided the certificate capabilities that we needed it to. But MPLS router is up and running, which is what I was looking for. That's a great thing. And then what I'm going to start doing is DC switch is online and should be getting a BGP peering up and running here momentarily. And I'm going to start bringing on the ASA. Get that up and running real quick. So, I was getting worried something happened to you. Nope, nothing happened to me. I was out and about, had some stuff pop up, and, you know, life was, life got in the way, as I'm sure you can imagine. So yeah, good stuff. So yeah, cool. So whoever has joined the live stream, I do appreciate you guys taking the time to jump on here and hang out with me for a little bit. I don't know how long we're actually going to go. Probably, I don't know, hour maybe. I figure an hour is a good round number to attack it at. And all that good stuff that goes along with it. We'll bring these guys online and get them squared away. So yeah, good stuff. So how is everybody doing tonight? Hopefully Saturday is treating everyone well. And all that good stuff that goes along with it. Ooh. Gotta love those little notifications when things don't work out quite the way you want them to. Go ahead and start bringing this guy online. And all that good stuff. So yeah, good stuff. Cool. Awesome stuff, man. Sorry that it's taking me a little bit longer to get this up and running than I would have liked to. I didn't have internet where I was at, so I had to wait to get this up and running until I got home. So I'll go ahead and finish getting these online. Yeah, it's probably going to start spiking the CPU and slowing some operations down, but that's okay. Once we get there, we'll be okay. Get some of this squared away and operational. And we'll take a look at some of the different capabilities that are out there regarding the solution. Talk a little bit about how to get it up and running and that type of stuff. That's one of my number one questions is, well, I can't get X to work. How do you do that? So we'll break those things down as we go along. So good stuff. All right. Clipping right along here. Let me know if you guys are interested in looking at some servers that I would recommend in terms of the servers you could use to roll this out on, and I'll be happy to show you guys some options that are out there. Get some of the stuff up, other stuff up and running. How much power does this type of topology take to run? You're talking like CPU cores? Is that what you're referring to? Because I really couldn't tell you how much like wattage or voltage or amperage. I really don't know. I've never really paid too much attention to it. But I can give you a roundabout idea of like, I don't know. Once this is fully booted up with 24 vCPUs and 48 gigs of RAM, it takes about 12, 16 vCPUs and about 24 to 30 gigs of RAM on average. Sure, I can pull up eBay and we can take a quick look at how that what that would look like. We can definitely do that. I think that'd be a good idea to actually look at, because then you'd see what all the cool stuff is that gets it up and running. So while we're waiting for some of this other stuff to come online, I'll go ahead and if we look at the status of because CPU is kind of high right now, look at the fact that we're trying to bring things online. Once devices come online and then they idle back out, then they'll be in really good shape to it'll bring the CPU down significantly and stuff like that. So we'll be good to go there. iOS 14 hopefully will boot up here momentarily. Let's see, did we get there? So let's go ahead and get iOS 13 up. Let's go ahead and get iOS 15 up. And then for whatever reason, 14 is just lagging behind. Start. There we are. 14's up now. Yeah, this lab is completely running inside of EVE-NG and works out really, really well. So, good stuff there. I don't use anything but EVE-NG anymore. If I have my way about it, it's Eve or nothing. So yeah, good stuff. Cool, now that we're getting most of the lab built up, I'm going to go ahead and finish off these last few devices and get them squared away. And then while I wait for the remainder of them to finish, I'm going to go ahead and I'll jump over to eBay and I'll show you give you guys some ideas of what servers you can go out and get and things like that. So here we're going to jump over here and go to ebay.com. Oh, it's supposed to be eBay. And on eBay, I often recommend that I personally like the Cisco UCS platform, but any server with virtualization capabilities is pretty much going to be golden here. So if we take a look at the Cisco UCSC, I like the M3. It's what I happen to run at home. So I have a host I used, virtualize the INE topology, but some of the SD-WAN stuff. Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that one, Aaron. It absolutely does, and that's the unfortunate part about it. When you start diving into the getting like a CCIE topology up and running, if you have like an older box, like I have an IBM, it's actually in this server right here. I have a IBM 3650 M3 or M2, something like that, and this guy's only got, this is it's an IBM System X, and it's running 8 CPUs at 2.8 gigahertz, which gives me about 23 gigahertz or so, 22 gigahertz of processing power. Thanks, Mehdi, I appreciate that. So when this gets rolling, it actually chews up the CPU cores pretty quick, and it kind of sucks in that respect because it's when you see $50, that's obviously just if you can get it for $50, it's got that's actually a pretty good deal. There's no hard drives, but I know I'm pretty certain that $50 will become $500 pretty quickly in that respect. So, but hey, if you can get it for $50, I would too, right? You know what? I'd actually give you a fist bump and a high five for pulling that off. Why is that over here? Is that over here? That's over here. That's just being weird. Anyway, I see some speckling in my green screen. I might have to adjust my background. Yeah, exactly, Pete. Exactly. $70 to ship it. Yeah, right now you're already at $120. It doesn't really make it worth it. So, but yeah, the main thing you want to be looking at isn't so much the price, right? But obviously, price is going to drive what you buy. So, the one thing that I like to look at is 2 8-core. And you want to look at something, obviously Xeon, but anything, the latest and greatest you can find is obviously going to be better, right? So in terms like this, you get 2 6-core, right, and 64 gigs of RAM for no hard drive. So you obviously have to go out and buy like a couple of 270 gig SATA drives, for example, 10,000 RPM or 15,000 RPM SATA drives, in order to drive the system. So install ESXi on it and get all that stuff running. All that type of stuff was really, really, that's how I got started with it. But once you start getting into here, I actually buy servers based off of how much RAM they come packed with and how beefy the CPUs are. So actually, the reality of it is, if I was looking at this server, this would be a really, really good buy right here. So do you think the Pro version of EVE-NG is worth the buy? I mean, yes and no. So, for example, I have bought the Pro version, and the only thing that I saw, there's a few things that Pro gives you that the community does not. For example, the first one is going to be the ability to hot add links between devices, right? So where community, you have to power down the devices in order to add a physical link between them. So that kind of sucks. If you realize, or you need to adjust the cabling for whatever reason, you don't have to power down the device and power back on. That kind of blows. The other one is you can change the link type, so you can change it from like a straight link to like a curving link. And I'm sure you guys have seen some of the people post the Pro version. The Pro version gives you the ability of running Docker containers internally inside of Pro. So, for example, a Docker container can be used to run a Linux VM or a Linux container that can be used for a certificate authority, for example, if you needed to run PKI for your SD-WAN solution. So stuff like that does come into play. But beyond those specific things, that to me isn't enough of a requirement or a need or well, that's probably the wrong way to refer to it. Isn't enough of a driver for me to spend $120 for the license. But I mean, if you're looking for ease of connectivity for that type of stuff, hey, more power to you. I personally am not. I don't see the value in that. So now I had gone out and bought the Pro version back in, I think it was like September or October, when I took a look at SD-WAN a while back, and this is a year ago. Okay, I bought it because I couldn't get the community version of Eve to run SD-WAN. So I bought the license for Eve Pro, and then that came with the templates already built for the for the Viptela images. So I did that for that capability, and that was really the driving determining factor. So because I couldn't do it in community version, and then ironically in the November 2019 release, they took the templates that they used in the Pro version and used and added them to the community version. So then the community version supported the templates for Viptela, and boom, I was like, well, I don't need that anymore. So I went ahead and I went to the community version instead, and I've been using that ever since. There's very few things that I need the Pro version for, and not enough of a bang for the buck, from my opinion. I would rather download the community version and then take that $120, add like $80 to it, and then go buy the Cisco marketing or Cisco modeling labs, or what was Viral. I'd rather go pay for the license for Viral and download all the images from Cisco so that you get all the stuff that you need. And Viptela images are still sourced. They're not available through Viral yet. I hope they change that in the future, to be honest with you, because especially with the new SD-WAN components to the new CCA lab, and the SD-WAN exam being a dedicated exam now for the CCNP Enterprise track. I kind of wish they would release it, maybe a couple of revisions back, maybe. Instead of releasing 20.3, you release, let's say, 19.2 or something like that. And then, be a revision or two back in terms of your support or what you release. I think that'd be a good idea, because then a lot of folks are going to be able to gain access to the images that way. So just some things that I wish that they would do. But yeah, you bring up good questions. So in terms of the servers themselves with the CPUs, that's really the kicker here. So the servers that I'm running, matter of fact, let me go ahead and pull up this guy, right? Nope, not him. Where is he? Let me go ahead and log into this one, 10.255.1.81. So this is my other server. Let me go ahead and log into him real quick. This is the baby brother to one of the other servers that I have. Go ahead and log into him real quick. This is also running on Cisco UCS. It's a 220 M3. So it's a slightly older CPU, but where you come out on top is with the CPU count, or the capacity in gigahertz. Even though this server here has got 22.4 and this one's got 24 right here for gigahertz capacity, the difference is night and day. Where you have an X5560, and this guy's got an E5-2620, so a way newer CPU, right? So because it's got a way newer CPU, it has more processing capability. So it's going to be able to handle more stuff that you throw at it. So not sure how much more, to be honest with you, but it's going to be able to handle more because it's a newer CPU. So I ran that, and then the one that I'm running on my Windows server that's running Workstation is a 2650 right here, where this is a 2620 right there. The other server is a 2650, and it works out really, really well. So, but yeah, that's basically where that comes into play. Now, when we look back at this, the servers here, you want to be looking at how many cores you're going to get per CPU. So if you can get, 8 cores on a single CPU, that means if you have 2 physical CPUs, that means you're going to get a total of 16 cores, right? And then if you enable hyperthreading, that's going to double that to 32. So that means you'll get 32 cores, and you'll be able to scale it out, and that means that you could, the more CPU cores, the virtual CPUs, the more virtual CPUs that you can associate to a particular virtual machine, the more horsepower that particular device is going to have in order to run with, which is what I did right here on this server. Where if I was to look at the device manager, I will have processors for days. Go ahead and pull this guy up right here. I have processors for days here. So all these guys right here are all processors, which is really what I'm going for in terms of the operations, because that's what you really want to be using for doing the compute side. What's your recommendation on VMware? Is the trial enough just to run? It is initially for the first 30 days. So if you want to run Workstation Pro the first 30 days, you can run it all day long and you're good. Where if once the 30 days is passed, and that's the Workstation Pro version, which will give you the ability of rolling out or adjusting this the amount of CPUs and the amount of RAM that can be used. But if you don't have the Pro version, if you're using just Workstation Player, so deploy just a single VM, you don't have the ability of manipulating any of the underlying resources. So you can't allocate a lot of resources to a single VM. So the trial is enough for the first 30 days, but once you bust that 30 days, you need to assign a license to it. So, but if you don't want to run Workstation, you want to run just dedicated VMware, so ESXi. So instead of using Type 2 with Workstation, go Type 1 with with ESXi. That would be the next. That would be the better of the two ways to go, honestly. That's where this guy right here comes into play. Where we have this. This is bare metal. So I installed ESXi directly on the server hardware, and it was able to do the job that I needed it to do all day long. So it gets the job done there, and then you can just reinstall VMware, or you can go out and get the free license for it and go that route. But if you can get, I actually pay for, the company that I work for, we went out and bought a vMug Advantage license, so we actually get the eval experience. So we get the ESXi Enterprise Plus license for our ESXi servers, and that works out really well because then I can just run, servers for a year in a lab environment. Yes, I would recommend ESXi hands down if you have the ability to do so. Good stuff. Cool, guys. Well, awesome. So we should be just about there with the server. So let me go ahead and see if this guy's finished booting up. And if he is, we'll take a look at the operations here. Looks like I lost iOS 7, decided to take a dirt nap permanently. But anyway, what I can do here is on these systems, they should be all ready, which is what I'm looking for. So for example, if I was to look at vEdge 1, for example, one moment please. Yeah?
Hi,
I have no idea. You'd have to call him and ask. Bye. Kids. It's great. A good solution for... Yeah, I agree. So when you look at something like the edges and we log in with the default login credentials and we do a show IP route, we can see a lot of routes. A lot of really cool stuff going on on the server. Stuff is still coming online, obviously, but it's actually kind of fun when you start getting into the meat and taters of how it all works. But yeah, it's oh, you guys are probably listening to the phone call with my kid. Yeah, we have in the house IP phones, and so my oldest son is out of town. My youngest son is stayed home, and so he's got a friend spending the night. So yeah, he's like, how do I do that? I'm like, no idea. Call your brother. So yeah, good stuff. So cool. I know there's a little bit of a lag in terms of what I'm doing here. So is there anything operationally anybody would like me to show, like, what some stuff about the SD-WAN solution? I'm not a lot is running. I can try to show you some things, but right now it's I don't know what to show you other than to show you some of the stuff that's going on and how to do some basic manipulation to things and things like that. But if there's anything that anybody would like to see, whether it's behind the scenes, how did you get something to work or how did you get something to set up, I can show you that and stuff like that. But if, like, for example, if somebody wanted me to show them how to do some sort of advanced controlling capability in SD-WAN, I would be like, yeah, I'm not there yet. Still working on that. So, but good stuff. Good stuff. If only we can access servers with CPU hardware like Threadrippers. Pete, I think you're referring to that AMD with a Threadripper, or is that something else? I'm not familiar with that. Any thoughts about XCP-NG versus ESXi? I'm not familiar with that, Zach. I don't know what that is. You'd have to give me some insight as to what those things are. Which is why I'm glad you guys are here, because you're asking questions about stuff I have no idea about. So I'm learning. So yeah, never ending. It's never ending for that type of stuff. So it's all good. Good stuff. So for those of you that are joining us right now, for anybody that's come in the last 10 or 15 minutes, thanks for stopping by and hanging out. We're talking about Cisco SD-WAN in my home lab and stuff like that. So if you guys have any questions regarding SD-WAN that I can answer for you, go ahead and drop them in the chat and I will do my best to answer those as we go along. So yeah, I can absolutely talk about what in my mind's eye, what it is that we can do and stuff like that. So yeah, absolutely. Oh, okay. I did not know that. Okay, cool, man. Thanks. I was not aware of that. Awesome stuff. Good stuff. Let me go ahead and pull up my pen tool. I see. Yeah, see, I didn't want to just say reset the evaluation license. So, that is an option as well. But, I have to be kind of careful in what I say. So, I don't want to do anything that would get me booted off YouTube. But I'm sure that would be an option for you. Good stuff. Right? Alpha Ribitol. That's awesome. Cool. So, let me go ahead and pull up vManage. vManage is actually not pulled up at the moment. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. And this is vManage. So let me go ahead and log in real quick to that. I would hope not. I would hope not. And if you did, it'd be like this isn't technically. I think this is being recorded. So I have to be. Anyway, So this is vManage for those of you that have never seen it before, and this really is the no cloud plus even. I mean, see, it's funny you bring that up, Bart. I actually did look into that, and when I looked into it, I was because I did that was it the $300 credit you get on Google Cloud, and it does work. There's some people I know that have used it, but I find it to be more of a hassle to get things working the way that I want them to. And when I tried to deploy it in Eve, it seems like if the CPU got above like 65 or 70%, the box would crash. So, and then I'd lose my GUI connection to it, and then I'd be sad because then I had to go about doing it another way. So I prefer, and then that same $300, I honestly have no idea what the costs are. I honestly couldn't tell you. So, but what I can tell you is that's an operational expense, right? So if that's all you can afford or that's all you can pull off, completely understand and totally respect that. But if you're fortunate like myself to have the means and the ability to buy a server and deploy it in your home lab and then roll out ESXi and then Eve on top of that, that's been the way I've gone, because then I'm not looking or not waiting for availability. I'm not like trying to like pinch a penny here to spend a penny there, stuff like that. So it's the only thing that comes out initially is obviously the capital expense to buy the server, but then there's the operational expense to keep the power on. But at the end of the day, it's the $100 a month that I'm spending on power for the 3 servers and a few pieces of network equipment. Guess what? I would rather learn how to do all that stuff in my home lab, and I could take that knowledge forward with me in the industry. Like the crashes. Yeah, exactly. So when stuff like that pops up, I've never really talked about some of the bad things that I've seen, because I don't want to bash cloud, because cloud's great for the right use cases. But at the end of the day, I just find it easier to do things other ways. So if it works for some people, great. If not, can you outline how the overlay works? Sure, I can do that. Absolutely. I can walk you through that process. It's actually pretty simple. Well, maybe simple is the wrong term. It's not very, there's not a ton of individual things that you need to do. So I did talk about this in one of the videos, but I've got no problem talking about it again. So are you so who here is familiar with the way that something like DMVPN works with manually setting up the crypto and a bunch of other stuff? You know, or if you don't have the background in that particular area, for those of you that do have that background, you know how much of a pain in the butt it is to do that. Then you'll be kind of blown away as to how Viptela does things in the back end. What's up, Einar? Yeah, I know who you are. I know who you are, Einar. It's all good, man. What's up? So you wish I would have something go sideways in a cloud environment and then record a video on what went sideways. You know what? I'll see what I can do for you, Bart. That probably would be more satirical and for comedy purposes. But hey, you know what? You never know. So, all good. Not enough just yet. There's a little bit of a delay between what I'm saying and your guys' comments, so I might miss some of the points you're trying to get when you make a comment. So if I look like I have no idea what you're talking about, it's okay. So what's up, Yogesh? How you doing, man? So when we talk about the overlay itself, for those of you that come from like a DMVPN world or an IPsec VPN world, let's talk about that real quick, and then I'll talk about how Viptela is a little bit different, and then how those pieces come into play. All good, man. So the way that it normally works, if we take like a tunnel-based VPN, let's say vEdge 1 to vEdge 4, for example. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, well, you're about to get a crash course in some basic VPNs. So in order for these two guys to work back and forth, obviously the underlay would have to be in play. So connectivity between the devices would have to be there. So let me actually switch my gears a little bit. Our debug commands are same as DMVPN. If you're talking about debugs on the Viptel devices, I have not been successful in debugging the process. So on the V-edges that I've worked with, I haven't been able to get debugs to work, but I am going to be playing with the C edges, so the ESXi SD-WAN. I'll play around with that and get that, see how that plays out, because there's some like syslog messages that come into play. So not on the V-edges, no. Let me switch up my color here. We'll do red as the underlay and green as the overlay. So in this case here, connectivity between V-edge 1 and V-edge 4 would need to be in play. And that means that you need to have connectivity this way as well, right? So you have your underlay in place. As long as you can reach the remote router or whatever via the underlay, that's the necessary first step. So you need to be able to ping from 192.1.1.2 to 192.1.4.2, for example. As long as that's good, then you're in good shape, right? And over MPLS, the transport's irrelevant, right? So you could run this over any IP-enabled connection. So MPLS, Internet, 4G, LTE, they all get the job done, right? So when we talk about getting the underlay in place, that's what we mean. The underlay is going to be your physical connectivity to outside of the network. Yep, and hub and spoke is one of those capabilities that the overlay will enable. So when we talk about the overlay, let me switch gears to green. When we talk about that, we're looking at setting up a direct tunnel between the two devices, right? And this direct tunnel is going to allow us to send communication directly between the devices. Yeah, good stuff, man. And that's exactly where I'm going. Talk about the old way of doing stuff and how the overlay replaces that methodology. So when we set up a tunnel this way, this allows V-edge 4. Nice, man. Good stuff. You send the traffic, and the traffic rides over this logical tunnel to wherever it's got to go over on this side, right? And then what you do is you take cryptography like IPsec VPN, and whether it's a crypto map based deployment or whether it's based off of a IPsec profile, traffic that flows over the tunnel is encrypted, right? So for example, if I'm trying, this is 10.4.15.0/24 over here, and over here we've got say 10.1.16.0/24 over here. Well, if this route gets advertised over here, and then this route gets advertised over here, the way that the V-edge is going to look at it is going to look in the routing table and go, okay, well, how do I get to that remote network? So the routing, it's going to look in the routing table, and the routing table is going to say, okay, V-edge 1, in order for you to reach 10.4.15.0/24, you're going to have to ride the tunnel from V-edge 1 to V-edge 4 in order to get there. Well, that's great, because then there's already an IPsec VPN or cryptography already associated to that tunnel, so that means that the traffic that goes over the tunnel will be encrypted, but nothing else, right? And that's one of the beauties here. The problem with that deployment methodology, that deployment scenario, is that your GRE tunnel, as Bart has already mentioned, plus the IPsec VPN and the routing all have to be manually set up by folks like you and myself, right? We have to go through and set that up in order for it to work, right? Well, what happens if you didn't want to deal with any of that, right? Let's say you just wanted to go out and roll this scenario out and have it just come online. So SD-WAN to me typically means a bunch of technologies that have been in place but now offered as a product. Okay, yep, I agree with all of those. You're concatenating a bunch of different capabilities into a single product, which I completely agree with you on that one. Are the tunnels always up or spun up on demand similar to DMVPN? So the tunnels are always up. So SD-WAN is an always-on scenario out of the gate. So so SD-WAN in its initial setup is equal to a full mesh design. Out of the gate, everybody has connectivity to everybody else. Out of the gate, right? Now it depends on the transport, because there will be scenarios where if you have devices like ESXi sitting over here that only has connectivity to the MPLS cloud, for this example, well, then ESX2 will only be able to reach ESXi over the MPLS transport for this particular example. But in other cases up here with ESX3, he has connectivity over internet and via MPLS. So ESX1 should be able to form IPsec tunnels to ESX3 over both transports. Spoke to spoke as well as hub and spoke. Exactly. So it's the full mesh. 100% on point right there. Now, that's great, right? And the cool thing about that scenario, and that cool thing about the deployment methodology, is when you get that rolled out, it gives you any-to-any connectivity, right? That's awesome. But if you're looking at a really small solution, a really small deployment, well, I'm going to just say less than 100 devices, 100 V-Edge devices, then you're okay. But if you tack on a 0, so this is great if you are, what's the less than sign? Equal to or less than 100 devices, right? But if you are, it's bad if you are equal to or greater than 1,000 devices, right? Now you might ask, well, why is that a bad thing for 1,000 devices? Well, because you've got an IPsec tunnel from every spoke to every other device, right? So if there's 1,000 devices, you're going to have a bunch of tunnels to everybody else, right? And that's where you run into scalability issues. Scalability issues can make or break a design, right? So if the CPU starts climbing on your deployment and you're like, well, I'm not sure if this is a bad idea or a good idea. If your CPU is sitting at 70% to maintain all of your IPsec VPNs, but you don't need to have reachability between all those locations, then maybe trimming that connectivity back and going over to a hub, let's say here, let's do a hub and spoke deployment might be more the direction you need to go. And that's a discussion that you and the company or you and the customer would need to sit down and figure out. Do you advise to separate internet from MPLS? I mean, one SD-WAN solution for internet and another one for MPLS. Good question. I think it really depends on what the customer is looking for. Number one. So if you're aware of being able to do both, then maybe that's one of the deployment methodologies that you could present to your customer if they bring that up. But I don't like to mix vendors if I don't have to. So for example, if I'm going to deploy Cisco SD-WAN for internet connectivity, to me it doesn't make any sense to deploy Silver Peak over MPLS, because then you're just complicating and compounding the problem, in my opinion. So I tend to like, if an organization is going to go Cisco SD-WAN, I'm going to deploy Cisco SD-WAN everywhere. Assuming you can virtualize these devices, are you able to spin up redundant hubs and form tunnels only to those? As far as I know, you should be able to do that. I have not tested that particular capability out, but as far as I understand, you should be able to. But don't quote me on that if I'm wrong. The thing about SD-WAN is the benefit of being transport agnostic. Exactly. So that's actually a good point. It doesn't care if you're riding over MPLS or if you're riding over internet. It doesn't care one way or the other. As long as there's IP reachability between source A and destination B, that's all it cares about. As long as IPsec VPNs can be spun up, that's really, at the end of the day, that's what they care about. So, but yeah, exactly. Cool. Good questions. So the cool thing is all of that initial stuff that you guys learn about IPsec VPNs, whether it's crypto based or tunnel based, with GRE tunnels and DMVPN and all that type of stuff. All of those individual layers need to be built and deployed and then supported to some level in order to keep everything online, right? But in the event that you don't want to do that, the cool thing with SD-WAN is all that stuff comes online out of the gate, right? So you don't have to be, as long as the V-edges can communicate to the controllers, and as long as V-edges can communicate to other V-edges over whatever transports, the IPsec tunnels come on out of the gate. You don't have to do anything. So being transport agnostic needs a little explaining. Back in the day, we had T1s, and we still do today in companies, but now broadband is cheaper. I agree with you on that. So yeah, it's one of those things where I used to work with T1s quite a bit that were backed, that were from the provider's edge to the customer's edge were frame relay. And then from the provider's connection into their backbone was MPLS. So I've seen it a couple different ways. I'm seeing more and more customers move away from those lease line solutions like frame relay and be dedicated MPLS, and they just have some sort of Ethernet handoff. But that's just what I've seen. That isn't everywhere. Do the tunnels only buy you traditional IPsec benefits, or are there additional features, functionality that enhances performance? So the traditional IPsec that you're familiar with is automatically there. One thing that they tack on to that is BFD, bidirectional forwarding detection, which is designed for fast failure detection. So for example, if the connection from, let's say this V-edge right here, VH2, the internet connection goes down for some reason. I did test this out in one of the NAT videos that I did, where what ends up happening is if the upstream provider connection goes down, the local connection detects the failure, the BFD sessions fail, and then after, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes or whatever it was, I haven't messed with the tuning of the timers on that. But what will end up happening is eventually any routes that are using the internet connection in VPN 0 will actually fail, and then any routes tied to that particular transport, that T-lock, transport locator, will be removed from the routing table. So that's like the only enhancement. But the IPsec itself is just the encryption between the V-edges, where the Cisco's SD-WAN solution, Viptela, it actually leverages its own dedicated protocol. So everybody good with me clearing the screen so I can start talking a little bit more about OMP? And I'm not an expert in OMP, but I want to, before I start diving into OMP, is everybody good so far with what I've talked about here? I don't want to jump the gun too quick on you guys. I don't know how much lag there is. But this is recorded. You guys can always go back. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll clear the screen off real quick. OMP. I'm getting the okay to fire away. Okay, so OMP. This is, in my experience, this is the differentiator between a lot of other SD-WAN solutions. Where, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've only seen one vendor that's actually deployed a dedicated protocol between their V-edge devices, where all the other vendors that I've seen that have like cloud-based controllers, like say for example CloudGenix that was acquired by Palo Alto, I don't know of any dedicated control protocol that they have between their controllers and their WAN edges and for manipulating how the data plane operates. Cisco or Viptela / Cisco SD-WAN, they're the only one that I know of that actually have a dedicated control protocol, and that's OMP, the Overlay Management Protocol. It's similar in a lot of ways to BGP, but not exactly the same. So there's some differentiations between the two. I won't go into anything super specific because, to be honest with you, I don't remember all the details. I'm still learning the solution, but they're the only vendor that I'm aware of that has a dedicated control protocol to control how the SD-WAN solution works. But if there are others, great. Feel free to comment, and stuff like that if there are. But what OMP does, and OMP is actually controlled via vSmart. This is basically your control plane for the entire SD-WAN solution. And I've got one deployed, but you could deploy more if you wanted to. You can have a couple of vSmarts. It's actually a good idea for control redundancy. But this is where your control plane is hosted. So what ends up happening is all of the V-edges are actually going to form a OMP peering back to vSmart. And this is done so that anything that's going on inside of the network, the vSmart finds out about it. So like for those of you that are familiar with the way that IBGP route reflection works, if I have a route right here that's advertised by vEdge5, I'm going to send that up to my route reflector, which is vSmart in this case, and then vSmart will go ahead and send it out to all of the other vEdges so that they know about it. Instead of me broadcasting this update to all of the OMP peers that I have connections to, I send one update to the vSmart. The vSmart receives that and then just pushes that information back out to the other vEdges. It's actually really cool in how it actually works. So I'm still learning how OMP is different than BGP, but at the end of the day, it's actually kind of cool in how it all works. But the way that it does this, so let's talk a little bit more about how the transports come into play and how that works, because if you don't understand that process, that can be kind of detrimental. So the control plane is hosted on vSmart, and vSmart forms OMP peerings with all the vEdges, right? Well, what ends up happening is you're going to form an OMP peering to your vSmart, but you're going to have connectivity between the vEdges via VMware uses VMC, the Virtual Machine Control Protocol for their band. Yeah, I knew that. I couldn't tell you what port it was. Is it ISIS under the covers? OMP? No. OMP is its own dedicated protocol. I think I know where you're going with the ISIS part for like ACI discovery and its underlay routing, but no, this is not ISIS to my knowledge. Or for like Fabric Path uses ISIS, but no, not here, not to my knowledge anyway. So every vEdge that you spin up that is and inside of VPN 0, which is going to be your transport VPN, this is going to be the transport side, right? This is going to get you out to your transport connections that you're going to be using to get to the other vEdges and your controllers. So IBGP. I don't understand your question, Mehdi. You'll have to give me a little more context for me to understand it. So you have, when you talk about VPN 0, for every interface that you configure inside of VPN 0, that's going to be another way for you to provide connectivity between your vEdges. So in this case here, vEdge 1 has an interface facing the internet and then an interface facing MPLS. So when I have this, I've got two different transports. I've got two different what they call T-locks. A T-lock stands for Transport Locator, and it's just an IP address that you use to provide connectivity between your vEdges and your controllers. And the idea of the T-lock is it's actually a combination of multiple pieces. T-lock is going to be the system IP. So for example, vEdge 1 is going to be 10.12.0.1. It's going to be the color, in this case here, public internet or MPLS, and then the third is going to be the encapsulation. So for this guy right here is going to be the system IP. RLock is routing locator. So RLock is a Lisp term. And where this comes into play is basically going to be the IP address that sources your Lisp updates to the map resolver map server. That's where RLock comes into play. So think of the RLock as the router that the routes sit behind. That's where the RLock comes into play. But they're pretty much synonymous with each other. So the RLock in Lisp is pretty similar to the TLock in SD-WAN. No, it's fine. I'm actually glad you asked because there is correlation between the two. They are similar in a lot of ways. Where the TLock is actually a combination of pieces of information, the system IP, the color, and the encapsulation. And this is where you're going to point your next hop to for some things. So, for example, if you're trying to control a particular SD-WAN flow, then you're going to have you can set the next hop to be a particular TLock, and the TLock, the color itself, when you've got multiple interfaces inside of VPN 0, I gave mine pub internet and MPLS. But you could use whatever color you want. Color is just a differentiator at the end of the day. There's nothing more to it than that. It's just a differentiator between one interface and the other. And then you have the encapsulation, which will be either GRE or IPsec. Now, obviously, most places are going to use IPsec as their connection type because that's what makes the most sense, right? But that's where that piece comes into play. So when you talk about a TLock, it's the combination of what is the remote system IP address that you're trying to reach, or where did that particular OMP route get advertised from? So, for example, if I've got 10.1.16.0/24 and it's sourced by vEdge1, and vEdge1's TLock IP, or system IP, is 10.12.0.1, and I learned that route via 192. Or through the public internet color and the MPLS color. What's cool about SD-WAN is if I advertise one route from two different TLocks, I'm going to know about that routing update twice. So if I advertise a prefix, 10.1.16, then that route will come in twice to vSmart. One via the public internet TLock and the other one through the MPLS TLock. So one route is going to have two next hops, and they're going to be equal cost multipath in that example. What will end up happening is vSmart will propagate that down. So for simplicity, we'll talk about how vEdge4 will receive it. vEdge4 will know in order to get to 10.1.16.0/24, go via the system IPs of 10.12.0.1 and 10.12. Let me go ahead and get out of the way. .0.2, or sorry, in this case here, we're talking about just that, and then we're going to learn it via two different colors, so pub internet and MPLS, as well as IPsec as the encapsulation. And that allows the ECMP, the equal cost multipath. That allows that one route to utilize both. That allows the vEdges to say, okay, well, I'm learning that routing from two different directions, so that means I should be able to send the traffic out towards that particular destination out both TLocks. And that's really that's what makes SD-WAN shine. Where if you're like used to the old way of how things used to work, it's like, okay, well, which tunnel do I send the traffic out? Well, it really depended on what you were trying to do, how that tunnel was tied to a particular interface. Here, there is no tunnel tied to an interface in this respect. You've got, but there is. So I don't have a much better way of explaining this or trying to articulate this, but like for example, a GRE tunnel is usually bound to a particular interface, right? So if you have a GRE tunnel tied to MPLS and you have a GRE interface tied to internet, as long as the metrics are the same for the routes being learned over that GRE tunnel, then you're going to load balance out. Same rules apply here. But if you make an adjustment to the GRE tunnel itself, you're going to prefer one over the other. To my knowledge, you can do that in SD-WAN, but I have not tested that particular feature capability out, so I don't really know whether or not that's actually true or not. But based off of some of the reading I've done, I'm sensing that there's some validity to that. So, but that's basically how that piece comes into play. So when we talk about the operations of the network and how it works, that's how the overlay is formed, and how the overlay figures out how to forward traffic between X and Y and things like that. So not terribly complicated, right? But definitely something that's a little bit different from the ordinary networking config that you may have seen in the past. So cool. Well, this was actually a lot of fun. I'm actually glad that I was able to jump on here and hang out with you guys for a little bit. So, and we can do other live sessions as well as we move forward. But we're about the 1 hour mark, just a little over that. So I don't want to keep you guys for your weekend. I'm gonna go do some labbing on this some more and dive into some more details. And I figured every Saturday we can hop on here for an hour or so and talk about tech for a little bit and dive into all the cool stuff that goes along with it. So that is my goal. Yeah, no problem, Bart. I'm glad you were able to hop on here and hang out for a little bit. Good stuff, man. So if you guys have any questions or would like a particular topic covered between now and next Saturday when we dive into, I think I should be able to do it next Saturday, unless something pops up and I can't. Yeah, no worries, man. If you guys have any topic that you would like me to dive into or talk about or provide a little bit of clarity for that I can, definitely comment on the community posts when I post for the next live stream and all that good stuff. Yeah, so good stuff, guys. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining, that has joined. I want to thank everybody that was able to hang out with me for the past little bit and all that good stuff. So that's pretty much all I had for this evening. Stuff like that. We'll dive into some other stuff. Let's see. I have to figure out the transition from where my company is now with hierarchical topology to this. Yeah, I mean, we can definitely, if that's something you'd like to chat about a little bit, maybe we can come up with something for that. What do you think of Versa SD-WAN? Actually, it's kind of funny you bring that up. I actually interviewed with Versa like 2.5 years ago, and at the same time that the company that I work for now interviewed me, and I ended up going the other direction. So funny you mentioned that. I have not actually seen their solution deployed, so I don't actually know. So I can't speak to something that I'm not aware of. But I'll look into it and see what's out there. But I don't know anybody that's running it, nor what they really offer, so can't really provide any insight on that. Are you going to talk about failures in future, failover for each color? Yeah, I can actually show you that the next time we go live and dive into that. I figured this first session would be a good way to dive into some of the different capabilities that are out there. So I have played around with a little bit of the failover, but not a ton. Could you or do you have a video going through step-by-step steps between Cisco and Silver? No, I can. What I can do regarding setting up the I've already done the setup for the SD-WAN solution, but I've never set up Silver Peak or CloudGenix. So here's the negative part about Silver Peak and CloudGenix, in my opinion, is both of those particular platforms, you need licensing to run, and Silver Peak, you can actually run Silver Peak. They have a dedicated training program where they'll give you access to the platforms to get you certified through their certification program. But I have not seen, I've seen CloudGenix once or twice in the past, but I can't speak to how good it is now. It's been so long. But yeah, I'd like to see them more just to see what they look like, but I have not seen them in a while. Do you plan on videos about SD access? I'd love to, but unfortunately I don't have access to any of the capabilities to run it. There's a dedicated server you need in physical hardware, and the last time I looked into that to potentially do it with the training company that I'm with now, it was $300,000 or $400,000 to kick that process off, and they didn't see the value in spending that kind of money. So we have iWAN now and going to Meraki. Okay, cool. Is your iWAN solution working out? Hopefully that's working out for you. Have you used any sites that have non-SD-WAN links between them, joining two of your sites with both fiber WAN ring and also Cisco SD-WAN? No, if I understand your question correctly. So I do have the intention, SD-WAN devices do have the ability of doing IPsec VPNs to non-SD-WAN devices to try to integrate and do like a migration from non-SD-WAN to SD-WAN. And that's what these devices up here at the top are for. I've done some basic testing with it, but it has not panned out well for me. I was able to get like unidirectional communication, but not bidirectional. Once I have that pinned down and figured out, I'll obviously do a video on that, but not as of right now, no. What's up, Azat? Long time no see there, my friend. Good stuff, man. Yeah, iWAN is very buggy. I found it to not be really worth the effort. Curious about how iWAN solutions are using PFR. Yeah, I'm actually, I did an iWAN proof of concept probably 4 years ago now. And after spending about a week on it, getting it up and running and deploying it, and migrating the existing DMVPN over to iWAN, it was bad. Within a couple of hours, we were transitioning back over to DMVPN. But a lot of companies that are looking at a software-defined solution for the WAN, I don't see iWAN being a big win. At least I don't see that being the way to go. To me, Viptela and the Cisco SD-WAN solution that I've seen so far, it's pretty good, but I'm still learning all the little nerd knobs and intricacies. So, but yeah, we'll take a look at that stuff as we go further along. And I'm also working on how I transition back into the CCNP and security, but see what we can do for that. Let's see. Huge ask. Would you have the topology on Visio to download? Actually, it's if you check the first video on the SD-WAN playlist, the welcome to next gen networking, in the description, I actually posted the EVE-NG topology in case you wanted to dive into that. Wow, that sucks, Bart. Man, that'd be a major bummer. Working through the complications of having multiple redistributions from one OSPF area to OMP and back. Oh, that just sounds dirty, man. That sounds dirty, really dirty. And I don't know how. I haven't tested that out. I've done some OSPF and then I've redistributed OMP into OSPF, and then advertised OSPF external routes into OMP to get propagation, but I haven't done multiple multiple redistributions. I've done it OSPF to OMP and OMP to OSPF, but I've not done multiple redistributions. Like if you're talking like VEdge 1 and VEdge 2, I have not done anything crazy with that. But yeah, that's a use case for me to test out, right? But this isn't the topology that I've got deployed isn't for a customer proof of concept. It's for me to learn the technology, and to play around with it. So, but good stuff. Well, anyway, guys, if there's something you would like Real world, we're replacing these. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah. I feel sorry for you, man. I really do. Hopefully that works out for you long term. I really do. But yeah, I will. For those of you that in my next community post about the next live stream, post in there what you'd like me to talk about, and maybe we'll come up with a rolling list of topics that we can talk about and things like that, so you guys can keep this thing going, weekly. So, all right, guys. I said I was going to bug out 10 minutes ago, and we're still here, which that's a good thing. We'll talk about some other stuff in the next live stream. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me, and I will catch all of you in the next live stream. Hopefully, I'll have to check my schedule. If it's not this Saturday, it'll be Sunday, but hopefully I can pull it off and do that. We can talk about some stuff. Cool beans, guys. Well, again, thanks for stopping by and hanging out with me, and I will catch all of you in the next live stream. You guys take it easy, stay safe out there, and don't do anything stupid, right? If you can help it anyway. All right, guys, take it easy. Have a nice night.